Hi, I'm George, founder and CEO of Pathr. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pathr and about how we're using our platform to solve one of the new challenges that retailers and others are facing during the pandemic. So first I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So Pathr is a spatial intelligence company. What is that? What does spatial intelligence mean? Well, we use data about the location of people and products inside physical spaces to help the operators of those spaces better manage their businesses. So what does that actually mean? What really is that? Well, let's look at some examples of spatial intelligence in action. Here we'll look at a visualization of staff and customers moving through a bike shop near Pathr HQ in San Francisco. Staff is in green, customers are in blue. Our machine learning can pick out instances of staff and customers interacting automatically using just the tracking that in this store leverages their existing surveillance system. We can see that the system is automatically picking out staff and customer interactions, as well as customer, and staff interactions, and separating those. As time speeds up here, we'll run through an entire day of data and watch how these patterns unfold as we aggregate the locations of these various interactions. One of the things that we can see is that staff and customers are interacting more frequently towards the bottom right of the store, whereas customers are interacting more frequently with customers towards the top left. So this is a teachable moment for the staff in this store. They're spending more time towards the front selling the bikes, and they should have been spending more time towards the back of the store helping customers understand which accessories they actually needed. We can also help with loss prevention. Here our system is watching each individual as they move through the store, gaining an understanding of their behavior using just their locations, so that eventually it can automatically detect that one individual is doing something suspicious. With no other information than their locations over time, there's no PII whatsoever, we identify who's shoplifting and who isn't. We can look at some operational use cases as well. We can understand the ideal restocking route in a given store at a given time and measure staff against this ideal to help them optimize their routes. We can also determine when is the ideal time to open new checkouts and measure the throughput and other performance metrics for each checkout. And given that we can do all of those harder use cases, of course, we can collect various zone-based and tripwire-based analytics, telling marketers, for example, how many people walked past their location versus how many people came in as an indicator of how well their signage is performing. So that was the world until February. Then COVID came along and changed everything. Retailers closed their doors, investors circled the wagons, and everybody was locked at home. Because we're spatial intelligence nerds, we were particularly focused on the aspects of the pandemic that relate to the movements of people. We closely follow geospatial analytics companies like Placer and Unicast, and we've been paying a lot of attention to the various types of digital contact tracing that are available, like SafePaths from MIT. But one area where we have firsthand interest and knowledge is in social distance and how it relates to people moving through stores. Stores that were open suddenly needed to think about social distance, and ones that were closed were going to need to understand social distance in order to reopen. So what do retailers want to know about social distance in their stores? Well, to start, they need to know how well their current location supports social distance, given normal amounts of foot traffic. If I open my doors today and my usual customer base came back, would people be bumping into each other, or would they have adequate space to move around? If the answer to that question is no, the next question you'll ask is, how do I immediately provide social distance to my constituents? This will entail limiting the number of people who I allow in the door, but what should that limit be? We've seen lots of operators using percentages of the fire code, or a fixed number of people per aisle, or which way the wind blows that day. There's a lot of guesswork going on. And what I want to advocate for instead is a principled statistical approach that eliminates guesswork and sets occupancy limits based on science. And once you've set your occupancy, given your current space, of course, the next thing you want to do is to increase that occupancy safely by optimizing your space. So we start with just a floor plan and some basic information about foot traffic that can be taken from traffic counters, transactions, or other sources. From there, our AI builds a sophisticated statistical model, which we're visualizing here. In this statistical model, we capture the movements of people through the space over the course of days and weeks of simulated shopping. And in this movement data, we can pick out instances of unsafe contacts, visualized here as red circles. This produces a mathematical understanding of how well suited a space is to social distance for a given amount of foot traffic and realistic shopping behaviors. When more data is available, we can include it in our AI model, bringing this synthetic environment closer and closer to reality, including going all the way to integrating live data feeds and monitoring unsafe contacts continuously in real time. But regardless of how the data is generated, what we end up with is a big pile of unsafe contact locations. We use that data to create a report like the one you see summarized here. We note how many people the fire code allows, and then how many people are typical to this space and whether the space is risky given normal foot traffic. This riskiness is characterized using our social distance score, or SDS, which is a number from 1 to 10, where 1 is people standing shoulder to shoulder, an environment with no distance at all, to 10, which is maximum distance between people, a giant room with just one person in it. Capturing this information in a score allows operators to flag different levels of acceptable risk and to compare locations within a fleet as well as to locations from others' fleets and even other types of locations. I'm able to say things like, this store performs better than these other 10 stores and has a level of risk appropriate to my industry and conditions in my region. In a case like this one, where the space is currently risky, we also make a recommendation as to how many occupants the space should be limited to. This number is based on our AI models and takes into account the layout, shopping behavior, levels of foot traffic, and other variables that 20% of the fire code can never take into consideration. Finally, again, taking into consideration the layout and shopping behavior, we identify ways to make the space better. Are one-way aisles the way to go? Maybe you need to fix your checkouts. And if you do all of that, how many people can you allow inside? This optimization is pretty key, so let's take a closer look. Here you're seeing a heat map of unsafe contact locations. White and yellow are problem areas, or zones where lots of unsafe contacts happen. Our system picks these hotspots out automatically and provides other tools for understanding unsafe contacts, like how spread out or clustered they are. Then we work with retailers to determine how best to remedy the trouble areas, given their own in-store environments. We represent those fixes in the model, and then the AI takes over again, telling us how many occupants the space can hold with the fixes in place. So to summarize that process we just went through, does my space currently support social distance? We evaluate this with a social distance score, or SDS, that lets you compare apples to apples over time and across locations. What should my maximum occupancy be given layout and shopper behavior in your store? We use our AI models to determine this maximum occupancy so that we're setting it intelligently, not using guesswork. And what should I change to increase maximum occupancy? And what can I increase it to while maintaining the best possible environment for staff and customers? What changes can I make so that I can move my limit up and know that I have comfort and confidence in doing so? Yeah, it looks like we have a question. Yep. So somebody from the audience has asked how we identify customer versus employee. Yeah, that's a good question. In most cases, we can do that just based on where they go and where they spend their time and the movement patterns that we see. So we're not actually using visual cues. We're just using where somebody spends their time. So the intuition is if you spend a lot of time behind the cash wrap, you probably work there. If you're in the store for 6 hours, you probably work there, and so on and so forth. So it's really our same kind of pattern matching machine learning that we're able to apply to identifying who's staff and who's a customer. So that's all I have for today. I hope you found this intro to spatial distance analytics helpful. I'm George, founder and CEO of Pathr. Don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to learn more about Pathr and the work that we do. Thanks.